So for those who are on the call, welcome. This is the Automotive Summit 2022. This will be a compact event. We've scheduled 1 hour, and we're going to go over a pretty specific agenda. The key thing with this event is to think about it as, well, we're setting context for what happened this year, and then we'll talk about what we want next year. Before we get started, I am going to show our antitrust policy notice. We show this at the beginning of every Linux Foundation meeting. It's to let people know that we have an antitrust policy on our website. And if you're from a Linux Foundation member company and you have questions, you can ask our counsel, Andy Updegrove. If you're not from a Linux Foundation member company and you have questions, of course, you can ask me or other people. But basically, the antitrust policy is designed to let everyone talk freely and make sure that we all feel comfortable. Now, I mentioned that today we have an agenda which is relatively compact. We're here at the Automotive Summit for 1 hour to try to understand some of the big developments around open source, intellectual property, and automotive, and to use that to let us plan next year, where next year we intend to have much more frequent meetings and to have a very interactive format, so building great solutions together. Our host and the chair of the automotive work group is Endo-san. Masato Endo from Toyota has been involved with OpenChain for a great many years and was previously one of our board members. We have a new board member from Toyota at the moment, but Endo-san remains deeply involved as the chair of automotive and a general contributor. He's going to lead our introductions and then go on to our automotive and open source news for this year. I'll let you know about some developments in our project, OpenChain. Some of them will be, I think, quite important for you strategically going into next year. Then we're going to do SBOMs, which of course are critical. This is something where, as all of you know, not only the US, but the global supply chain has had to focus deeply on how to manage open source security. And then we'll have a roundtable where we hope you'll feel very free to jump in and provide your thoughts on what we will do next year. Remember, OpenChain is about one thing, building trust in the supply chain. And our optic, our approach is compliance. It's license compliance, it's security compliance. We'll be having discussions around export compliance. All of this is on the table. And the question for us later in the meeting, and our goal in concluding, is how do we do open source trust in the supply chain? How do we do compliance in the context of open source in the supply chain in a way that supports the automotive industry? Okay, final note. This event, like everything we do in OpenChain, has an agenda, etc., etc. But this is a community. Jump in anytime with comments and questions. The most important thing is that everyone on this call is you. It's a company using open source. And your opinion, your perspective, your questions are the key to all of our success. With that, I hand over to Endo-san for introductions, and then our news for automotive and open source in 2022.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a moment, please. Okay. Can I see my slide?
Yes, it's perfect.
Yes, perfect. Okay. So at first, I'd like to explain about the purpose of our work groups. I think, of course, many OEMs and tier 1 or tier 2 company already know about the importance of the open source and the open source license compliance. But some companies yet not know about the open source well, and or not know about how to handling the open source compliance appropriately. So we decided to making our work groups to promote open source and open source license compliance, and to share the information inside the industry. And if it is possible, we'd like to making some standards or some best practice materials for sharing whole industries. So this is a community work. So this is completely free, and we can do our activity by completely needs based. So today we'd like to discuss about the direction of the next year and so on. So please give us comments and opinions for our activity. Yes, I already discussed about the purpose of this industry, this work group. And fortunately, in this community, there are many OEMs, suppliers, software vendors, and chip vendors, and many companies related to the automotive and the software industry. So we can have the very productive and useful discussion for our industry, I believe it. And I'd like to share this year's major news of automotive and open source. As you know, this year, Hyundai and Kia and Hyundai Mobis and Hyundai Autoever got the open chains conformance. I think this news is a very great news for automotive industry and OpenChain community also, because I think we intend to comply license compliance not only one company but also whole supply chain. So I think it is very important to get the conformance not only one company in supply chain but also a whole company in supply chain. Of course, Hyundai's supply chain is also very huge. So many companies join in supply chain. But I think this is very major suppliers join the stimulatory is very impressive for whole industries people and a very good message for promote open chain concept. And technology field, it some big news from the Red Hat. Red Hat also promoted to the vehicle Linux for vehicle. I heard by this news or other article. This is not based on the AGL, but they promote commercialization for the Linux vehicle Linux. And at the same time, they also joined the AGL community also. So Red Hat accelerate not only community work, but also commercialization of vehicle Linux also. I think this is also big news in this year. Yeah, this is my information. So I'd like to proceed next step. Shen-san, please.
Of course. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Back to our agenda slide, and we will begin the OpenChain news in just a single moment. Before we do the OpenChain news, I see that we have a lot of people on the line. So I wanted to flag that when we get to the discussion part of this conversation, before we start discussing, let's do a little roundtable intro of everyone. So we'll do that after the SBOM segment when we're doing the general conversation. But already I see tons of people from tons of companies. It's great to have you here. And for those of you who are dialing in from Honda, hey, I just saw your news that the car with Sony is coming out 2025. Can't wait to see what you're up to there. Alrighty, let's move on to the news from OpenChain. So as many of you know, we have got our standard in market for 2 years, right? And we've had two recent great examples of conformance, one of which is automotive, and that's Hyundai Kia, so parts of Hyundai Motor Group announcing conformance, and the other is Naver, which is a Korean company that maintains things like the Line messenger service, which is huge in the Far East and South Asia. Our market feedback on the ISO standard for license compliance is very positive. Different sectors, such as automotive, such as internet, such as finance, banking, and so on, are increasingly adopting this ISO standard for open source license compliance. We've been very happy to see the amount of work in places like China of adoption and in Europe. We do think that we will benefit from future growth in North America, so you can expect us to be adding more and more activity there. Let's see what type of metrics we've got that are interesting around adoption. Now, as you probably know, on something like the Linux Foundation, a community activity like the OpenChain project, we can't ask companies directly, what's in your contracts? we can't get too close to specific business decisions, but we do pick up information from surveys and so on around the world. And one interesting indicator regarding our ISO standard for open source license compliance was the 2021 survey by PwC and Bitkom. And that survey had an interesting note that people who responded, with companies having 2,000 or more employees, 20% said they were already using this ISO standard in what they're up to around open source. So the market penetration on the base core thing we do on license compliance is looking really good, and we're very happy with that. But I wanted to flag that license compliance is not the only thing we're doing nowadays. Around 2 years ago, we started work in the security compliance domain. And basically, we found that people were using our license compliance standard in security areas. So we said, let's make a guide that helps explain to people, if they are using this ISO standard, what parts are useful for security. And then, of course, people came and said, that's useful, but security specific stuff, let's talk about that. And gradually we edited and edited. And what we have now is a sister standard, which instead of having a focus on license compliance, has a focus on security. It's very close, it's very similar. If you conform to the license compliance standard, conforming to the security standard is actually a small step. Just like license compliance, the security standard is very high level. It's focused on the big picture of having some processes in place for security assurance programs. And you could regard it as a pathway that can lead people into specific choices around more complex security solutions. Just like our ISO standard for license compliance allows you to do the same for license compliance. The first generation of the security standard has been finished since March of this year, and it has been promoted since September of this year. We took a period between finishing it and actively promoting it for adoption because we wanted to basically give the community plenty of time to digest it and provide additional feedback. We're pretty confident after spending a year and a half building this that it's useful. We're pretty happy with the approach. We've also shared it with ISO Working Group Subcommittee 27, that's Information Technology Security, and they provided some good feedback. And it's out. It's a de facto standard, and we're preparing it for ISO submission through JTC1, just like the way we did with the license compliance standard. For the standard today, as a de facto standard, we have self-certification available in English and simplified Chinese. Big shout out to CAICT, an organization under the Chinese Ministry of Trade that translated us with the self-certification material into simplified English within 18 hours of the English release. They translated it into simplified Chinese. And we're pending the first conformance announcements as people go through the self-certification material and double check they have all the processes in place. If everything is smooth sailing with the JTC1 pass transposition process, which we are entering, we will expect to graduate around mid-2023 as an ISO standard. So Seth and Rex at Joint Development Foundation, they're the people who help us make standards, have indicated that that's the timescale we can expect. And our basic feeling is that after doing the license compliance standard as a de facto standard and then an ISO standard, now the security standard will follow exactly the same path. I wanted to flag this for you because it is not difficult to adopt. It provides you with a good solution for getting the security approach around open source in place. And if you conform to the de facto standard, which is in market today, you'll automatically conform to the ISO standard. This is exactly what we did with license compliance, and it's exactly the approach that we know is successful. Right. The second part is that both our license compliance standard and our security standard are entering an editing cycle right now. This means that we're targeting basically updates for both in 2024 or so. So our existing license compliance standard has been in market since 2020. Our security standard will be an ISO standard in market from 2023. And we expect both to be updated around 2024. So that'll be the third generation in license compliance and the second generation in security. The reason we're doing editing right now is very simple. We've got some great feedback from the ISO security experts regarding our security standard. Their feedback added lots of ideas about scope enhancements, right? So we didn't want to re-edit the first generation with expanded scope. We were happy with it, but we want to talk through those ideas for 2024. And from our license compliance standard, we've been in market for a while and we've had some great feedback there too. So we want to make sure that we can talk about those. So we kicked off the editing cycle for these things in the last week or so. And like I said, we'll be working on that throughout 2023, targeting ISO updates in 2024. This is flagged for you because you are invited. We want your feedback on license compliance. We want your feedback on security. We want you to help us work on the next generations of these ISO standards to help keep them super simple, but to make sure that we're covering everything in a changing marketplace. Now, apart from our ISO standards, we've been very busy working on reference material as always. Some of our reference material is stuff like training. In the last 12 months, we've released 2 major training courses that are available for free from the Linux Foundation. It's on the LF training platform, and both of them provide completion badges. So when people take them, you know they've completed them. One is an introduction to open source license compliance management, and the other is a more sophisticated second part implementation of the management. These free courses allow OSPOs and other people charged with dealing with open source license compliance to do it better. And it allows you to know that they're trained to a simple baseline that will be aligned with the rest of the industry. Of course, we will be working on sister courses for security assurance management as well. This stuff is all free. It's on the Linux Foundation training website, and you can use the course number LFC 193, LFC 194 to find them and begin using them today. Another important thing I wanted to highlight for you was that we've been working on playbooks. Late last year, in 2021, we released a playbook for medium companies. Now, a playbook is different from normal reference material because it's talking through the specifics of how a company, in our case, basically an imaginary company, executes on adopting stuff like the ISO standard for license compliance. We've released another playbook recently for small companies, which was increasingly sophisticated and refined. And that will feed back into updates for medium and large company playbooks in the future. These playbooks answer a question people have, which is, I see the ISO standard, I see checklists for self-certification, and I see reference material like example training slides, but how specifically do I execute on adoption in my company? The playbooks show you personas, they show you what those people do in that example company, and they provide that solid example. Now, the final major topic was to show you that we've been working on making our community clearer. OpenChain is huge, which is great and also confusing because we're all over the world and we're multi-industry. There's a lot going on. We've spent time talking with our community about how to describe itself. And in October and November, we're updating all of our information about the structure of OpenChain to show this. OpenChain has standards in licensing and security. So our specification work is now split under a licensing work group and a security work group. Our education work group deals with all of that reference material and the training courses. Our automation work group is helping to explain what type of tooling can help you get things done around compliance, license compliance, security compliance, export compliance. They're exploring the options. We're spinning up a public policy working group this month, and the public policy working group will work on how do we communicate with governments. We've recently seen OpenChain included in information from the Japanese government, the Chinese government, the Korean government. We're seeing it included in materials and discussions in places like the European Union. The public policy work group will help us understand that type of strategic policy making and hopefully allow us to provide ideas to people creating policy. And finally, our export control work group is spinning up this month as well. We wanted to provide a space for people to talk about export control because just like security, people are asking questions in the current market with tensions, with sanctions. When open source is in a product and it crosses a border, what do we need to think about? Now, of course, most companies already have in place licensing teams, security teams, export control teams, but we like to ensure we have the platform so you can talk through this stuff. We have special interest groups, automotive, of course, you're aware, you're on the call. Telco, which is very busy doing cool things like they're working on a telco SBOM specification. That's not creating a new SBOM, rather it's describing how telco industry companies can select an SBOM. What's kind of the stuff you need to think about? Do you want to get a standard like SPDX, ISO 5962, or do you want a different SBOM? How do you think about that? And of course, we have a special interest group for the OpenChain official partners as well. For example, I believe on this call, we see Marcel and Julian from PwC, which is one of the official partners on third-party certification. And then we have local work groups. China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, India, Germany, UK, and the US is rebooting and coming out again. These are spaces where people talk about stuff in their own languages and get things done. That's our global community, and you can engage with it a la carte. So you can decide, oh, I'm in automotive, I'm interested in licensing and education. Well, there's 3 mailing lists, and on our calendar, you'll clearly see which calls are relevant for you, et cetera, et cetera. So this helps you understand top level, open source, trusted supply chain, different types of compliance, whether it's licensing, security, export control. How do I approach it? How do I understand it? Join these working groups that are most relevant to you. You'll get the information, and that's it. Now, next year, this is leading into the conversation after SBOMs. Next year, we're going to continue to build adoption around ISO 5230, the ISO standard for open source license compliance. We want to scale to tens of thousands of companies. We're very happy that we know already several thousand companies are using it in one way or another, but we want to continue to scale. So even your smallest suppliers will start to have this on their radar and will start to put in place the key requirements of a quality open source license compliance program. That's key to increase our efficiency and reduce our costs. In the same way, we're looking at graduating our security specification from de facto to ISO standard. Just like the license compliance specification, the reason we're doing that is to make it super easy for your procurement departments to understand, oh, this is an ISO number to deal with open source security. I can talk to my suppliers about that easily. You can adopt the security spec today as a de facto standard, and when it's out as an ISO standard around mid-2023, you'll automatically be conformant with that. We're going to give the community plenty of space to explore other topics. For example, that new export control work group will give us a space to talk about export control. Right now, we have no plans to develop new standards, right? So we're not planning to sit down building an export control standard. Not yet. What we are going to do is give a space for people to sit down and talk. And we'll continue to do that. If the industry is saying export control is on their mind, we have an export control work group. If there's something else, another type of compliance that's on people's mind, we'll spin up a work group to talk about it. So we'll continue in 2023 to try to answer your questions about open source, trusted supply chain from the perspective of various types of compliance. And that is basically the overview of OpenChain. Our license compliance standard is doing well. Our security standard is out, ready for adoption, and will be an ISO standard relatively soon. We have tons of cool reference material getting more and more sophisticated, especially in areas like playbooks and online training. And finally, we continue to always try to be the point where you can start talking about your trusted supply chain from the perspective of compliance, security, license, export control, whatever. Our job is to make it top level, easier to use open source in areas like automotive. But starting up high, like us, then you have to start moving down the stack, right? It's all very well to have the key requirements of a quality license compliance program or the key requirements of a quality security assurance program. But how do you execute? What are the specifics? The first thing after setting in place the basic program is to start saying, okay, we probably need an SBOM. And that's where you start looking at SBOM options. You start looking at SBOM standards. After that, you move down the stack and you start saying, we should probably look at automation so we don't do things manually. And you start looking at tooling. Right now, in this automotive summit, we're moving from the high-level process management with our standards for license compliance and security down one level into SBOMs. And we're going to have a discussion about SBOMs. We're going to have it led by Watanabe-san from Hitachi Solutions. We're going to have it led by Ito-san from Renesas. And of course, Endo-san and myself will also be there. So for those of you who don't know her, Watanabe-san is one of the most active contributors in Japan and actually in the world towards the conversations around the OpenChain community. She has deep experience in open source compliance. She knows automotive very, very well. And she is a person who has encouraged us to do incredible community outreach, most recently by making a new tradition of an advent calendar, which you will see all through December being published in Japan and worldwide. Of course, our good friend Ito-san from Renesas has long been involved not only in automotive and open source, but the open source community as a whole. So these are people who really know what's going on across multiple company sizes in this sector. And this SBOM discussion will hopefully understand, as we move down the stack from basic process management, what's going on, why it's important, and what do we need to do about SBOM in automotive. Okay, Watanabe-san, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Shane-san. So let me share my screen. And can you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. So hi, everyone. It is very good to see you all here. Today, I would like to talk about SBOM. And let me just start by introducing myself. My name is Ayumi Watanabe from Tech Solutions. I'm an SBOM evangelist in Japan, and my specialty is open source management and SBOM as well. this presentation will last about 5 minutes. So I'd like to start by talking about what is SBOM. So an SBOM stands for Software Bill of Materials. We call it SBOM in short. It is a list of components in the software. SBOM is really useful for example, security risk management or compliance management. So nowadays, SBOM has received a lot of attention in recent years in many industry, of course, in automotive industry as well. Last year, the President of the United States signed an executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity. In that, it was stated that the US government required every software supplier to generate and disclose their SBOMs of their software. And the executive order is effective only in the US, but some international standards have followed it, and the movement affects Japanese companies also. And what are the key features of SBOM? So nowadays, software is huge and very complicated. It is like a black box. So it is really common that it is someone talking. Okay, thank you very much. And so nowadays, it is very common that there are thousands of components in one device. It is like a black box that I mentioned before. And the software bill of materials is a way to see inside the device. For example, what components or third-party softwares and is used to create my software or something like that. So as I wrote here, SBOM enables you to know your code, and SBOM gives you transparency and traceability of your software or device. And this slide, I described how to use SBOM for risk management. Here is the typical use cases of SBOM. For example, SBOM is really useful for compliance management. If you have SBOM and if you see some open source licenses or end user license agreements of third-party software, so you can see those licenses and you can compare those licenses and your SBOM, so you can manage your compliance risks. For example, if you don't like to have some software under GPL3, you can eliminate those components before you distribute or before you use. This is a typical way to use SBOM for compliance management. And another example is security management. For example, you have SBOM and you get some information about some open source vulnerabilities. So you can see, for example, in my software, I have Apache Log4j, and this has really severe vulnerabilities. So I need to upgrade or do something to fix them. This is another way to use SBOM for security management. So, and of course, for example, you can use SBOMs for end user license end of life management or quality management as well. And what content should we include in your SBOM? So this is the very basic guidelines of minimum elements of SBOM. This was published by NDIA last year, and in this minimum elements of SBOM, there are three parts of there are three parts. And for example, that fields, it shows you what you should include, what information you should include your SBOM. For example, you need to have supplier name or component name and version of the component. Some those of information you need to write in your SBOM. And also there are some guidelines for automation. For automation, we need to make SBOM in the same format, for example. And in this document, there are some recommendations of major SBOM formats like SPDX and CycloneGX and SWID. And of course, in this document, there are a lot of information very useful for creating your SBOM. So if you are trying to create your SBOM, please take this document. And finally, how to create your SBOM. This is the typical 5 steps to create your SBOM. Number 1, make a list of third-party components in your software. And number 2, gather the information required to fill out the baseline attribute. For example, the component name or component version or some hash IDs or the URL or something. And after that, step 3, import this component data into a structured SBOM format, for example, SPDX or CycloneGX or SWID. And number 4, after making the SBOM in some specific format, validate the SBOM. It means like checking it is work as an SPDX or it is work as does this work as CycloneDX or something like that. And number 5, it is optional, but after creating your SBOM, you will publish or you can give your SBOM to your customer or end users. So that's it. And this is the typical steps to create your SBOM. But if you want to streamline your SBOM generation, it is really useful to use the software composition analysis tools. It can automate these steps. And according to a survey by Japanese government, if you have more than 355 components in your SBOM, using proprietary SCA tools is more reasonable than making SBOM in manual. So I strongly recommend to use SCA tools for your SBOM generation. So this is the last slide of my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone. And Endo-san, over to you, maybe.
Okay, so this is the introduction of the SBOM, so everyone can understand about the importance and the outline of the SBOMs. And next, presentation is from the Ito-san, who come from the Renaissance Technologies, and he is a leader of the Japan OpenChain Japan work group, information license information exchange subgroup, and he also focused on the making the new standard of one option of the SPDX. So I'd like to know about the history and over outline of the SPDX, right?
Thank you so much. Can you hear my voice, Endo-san?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And can you see my desk, no?
Yes, no problem.
Okay. Today, I am Yoshiyuki Ito, Renaissance Electronics engineer, and I'm joining the discussion about the SPDX in OpenChain Japan Working Group, License Information Sub-Working Group. And I've contributed some elements to SPDX new revision, and so I will introduce current discussion status of the SPDX, especially for the packaging information, which correspond to our supply chain management or in automotive market. And as you know, SPDX itself is one of the major SPOM format, as Watanabe-san introduced the example of the SPOM format. And SPDX itself is already released at the ISO standard 5962 column 2021. And the SPDX version of the ISO standard is version 2.2.1. And this summer, it concluded SPDX 2.3 updated revision. And it enhanced for SPOM description. In the SPDX version 2.2.2, it mainly focused on the describe license description as a software package. But 2.3, it enhanced for the more widely information able to conclude in the those SPDX description to utilize the software package elements for and some other element. And now SPDX community are discussing about the SPDX 3.0 specification. And in the SPDX 2.3, it enhanced for SPOP description, added much of new element to describe software package information. And from OpenChain Japan Working Group, it contributed the release date, build date, and the expiration date of the package information description. And those latest latest this specification of the SPDX are described in this RDF format. As of now, they are struggling to release official revision of the those element table for public, but as of now, they are editing and improving current description. And as I said, some element of the SPDX enhanced, not only enhanced from license information description to package describe package itself. For example, valid antedate are added from this 2.3 to describe and to describe end of life of the package. It's not concluded in former 2.2 SPDX specification, but it also added those elements, and also it also discussed about the security profile in future SPDX specification, and it already added some more element to describe SBOM in the package relationships, or to refer the external document and so on. And to discuss about the future specification of SPDX, it's as of now, OpenChain Japan Working Group is proposing how to manage software package in the real supply chain, real in business, especially for automotive market, and and the SPDX community itself, they saw the SPDX format was generated by packaged software source code itself, analyzed by some open source software tools. However, in the real business, there are some binary package or other additional printed material are combined with the product software and go through the upstream to downstream in the supply chain. So, of course, machine readable SPDX format is quite important to exchange SBOM information, but also it required to handwritten style package information are needed. And so OpenChain Japan Working Group is contributed SPDX Lite. SPDX Lite, Endo-san introduced it, and it's already concluded in SPDX version 2.2. So it's also included in ISO IEC standard. And that is able to use in latest SPDX as a major format of SBOM. And also, OpenChain Japan Working Group discussing to contribute the further SPDX 3.0 format for example, we proposing that please add the package information section to describe scope of usage or intention of the supplier or something like that. SPDX community itself is quite active and quite wide spectrum, and many working group exist. But SPDX community consider OpenChain Japan Working Group sub working group of the OpenChain Japan Working Group, considered the one working group of SPDX community. So as of now, we are discussing about the additional description to utilize SPDX as SBOM in real business. Usage scope or usage comment or something like that. And from now, I also introduced SPDX Lite. It's already contributed to community. Wait for a moment, please. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Ito-san.
Oh, yeah. Just one example I prefer to share. Sorry. I'm yes, try to share the one of the example of the sorry, SPDX Lite format. Yes, this is the one example of SPDX Lite format with the Excel format, spreadsheet format. SPDX Lite is made official specification of the part of SPDX to write handwritten and the human readable format of the core part of the SPDX file. And in Japanese automotive industry, it partially utilized in real business to describe these license information to procurement division of the downstream and sales guys of upstream companies. That is the current real business of the SBOM specification in automotive industry in Japan. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Ito-san. So I think only 9 minutes remain. So is there some questions at first? And after that, we have the small discussion.
So Endo-san, I don't have a question. I just have a brief comment on SBOMs. We have seen a lot of different SBOM discussions in market, and sometimes, most of the time at the moment, people talk about SPDX. Though, of course, sometimes people mention other SBOMs, like there's a de facto standard called Cyclone DX. And I just wanted to make a quick comment that when it comes down to SBOMs, the most important thing is to find the solution for your product to market. And one great place to start is SPDX Lite, because it's such a minimal subset that you can probably quickly get started. So I just wanted to flag that if people are just getting started in SBOMs, if they're thinking there's a lot of options, if they look at the whole specs and they're like, my goodness, this is big, just start with SPDX Lite. Marcel has a question, is the SPDX Lite Excel template available on the web? Guys, is that available on the web? If not, we'll put it there. So I haven't seen it.
Yes, in the GitHub. So Ito-san, if it's possible, please share the link of the SPDX Lite.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Wait for a moment, please. I will share it.
As Shen-san mentioned too, I think SBOM is very important, but format is you can choose by each appropriate situation. I think Cyclone DX is good for the handling the security issues, and the SPDX Lite is that it is very simple format to exchange the license information and so on with legal division or IP division. I think SPDX full version is very many information inside that. So I think it is almighty response. So you can choose for each situation. It's I think better situation. And I'd like to share one slide. Just a moment. So this slide says we also using the SPDX Lite mainly, but our company also can accept other format of SBOMs, and we customized SPDX Lite for easy handling inside the company and exchange with our suppliers and so on. So I think flexible is very important, but I think format is very easier to keep the compatibility with other parties. So we can take the pros of SBOMs and we can handle by customize is a better, I think, better way.
On a final note on this, one thing to talk about is industry-specific automotive. SBOMs in automotive will be an interesting topic for us to cover next year, and particularly to, in the next couple of meetings, bring out the problems, challenges people might have about automotive SBOMs themselves, the specifics. This is something our telco work group is working on. And of course, the fact that we have, for example, Edo-san, which is someone who's worked very specifically on SPDX Lite, means that in 2023, we can discuss the specifics of automotive and cover a lot of ground and solutions.
Okay. And Watanabe-san, you work with other many automotive related companies, and so what is the situation of the adapting the SBOMs in your customers?
Yes, majority of our customers in automotive industries, they are now at very beginning stage of implementation of SBOM in their development activity. So their issues is I think they are mainly consider about which format do they use should they choose, I would say. I see SPDX is the major, but some companies have been using other formats very long time, so it is really hard to transfer SBOM in one format to another. So maybe it will be big issues for the whole of automotive industry, I think, in future, maybe.
Oh, okay, I see. Thank you. And Shen-san, I think we have only two minutes, so
very limited time.
Yes. And if it is possible, I'd like to introduce our new activity. Only 1 minute, and after that, we'd like to discuss about next year. Okay.
Of course, let's do it.
Yes. Yeah. So I think OpenChain specification is very good for making the governance structure inside the company. And so if each supply chain company in supply chain got the conformance, the whole supply chain also become a good appropriate situation. And at the same time, we'd like to have some process standardization of the software development supply chain also, because I think some company not know about how to communicate with other companies and what to do inside handling the compliance issue and security issues inside the co-development. And in automotive industry, such type of issue happens frequently. So, Watanabe-san, can you share our materials of standard, a new standard or new process analysis right now?
Okay. Do you mean this one? Maybe I am sharing my screen. It is on Excel format.
Got it.
This is on. This is on. This is the definition of our standard we are trying to define, and now we are focusing on to describe every action items that we should discuss and define within two companies. The ordering parties and supplying parties regarding their joint development. For example, we should discuss and define the open source policy for that project, or which open source or what license should we use in this project or something. And we should define some handling process, and we need to get awareness of every team members or something like that. So there is we have very limited time today, so I cannot speak all of these action items, but I hope you can get an image of this standard. Endo-san, is this enough?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
So, Shen-san, so we discussed right now inside the Japan work group. So, if someone are interested in these activities, we'd like to collaborate, international collaborate. So, if please give a comment to chat or something. I also put my address in chat box. So if it's possible, please email me.
And I have a note about this, Endo-san. It looks like our time is very short at 1 hour, and there's a lot of very specific information. No. That's life. But we have some very specific material to talk about with automotive. So I suggest that our next call in 2023, we've scheduled calls next year once a quarter. Maybe in February, we come back, we look at this document Watanabe-san has on the screen. We look at SBOM choices for automotive, and we very specifically work on that starting around February next year. Maybe we give an hour and a half or 2 hours, and we work on the practical solutions. On this meeting, we talked about the big sweeping. We talked about some of the options. So maybe next year we focus on the execution and solutions. We give time for people to get a specific answer to their questions and so on and so forth. What do you think?
Yes, and I think if it's possible, we have the meeting every quarter, and some guest speakers can want to share the each practice and or some information of each companies, and to study each other. So we'd like to proceed our work group accelerate next year.
Okay, Endo-san, everyone, thank you so much for your time. As you gathered, this was a general meeting we summarized last year, and we're touching on the fact that we have some very specifics to do. We didn't really have enough time for roundtable introductions and other material because there's too much to talk about. So we need to come back, talk about specifics in February. We'll bring back Endo-san, of course, as our chair. We'll bring back Watanabe-san. We'll bring back Ito-san, and we'll expect plenty of time to talk about the specifics of that document. For instance, Watanabe-san just showed, and to answer your questions and to take your contributions. Endo-san, I'm going to hand over to you for final goodbye. I just want to give a note to everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry for being a little incoherent. I'm on day 2 of COVID. I have no idea what's going on. But I appreciate that we had this meeting. Endo-san, over to you to close.
Yes, thank you so much for today's meeting. And of course, we can continue to discuss with you. And I already put my email address to my chat box. And so if you're interested in our activity more, please contact me. And of course, we not only me, but also we'd like to collaborate next year also. Thank you so much.